If you could change one thing just by your magic wand without any constraints right now before the fateful day, what would it be?
You mean one thing that's happened in the past 7 years, or one thing about amalgamation?
One open file, for instance, which for the fate of which you fear?
Well, a couple of things spring to immediate mind. You know, I would have found a way to stop the Premier from cancelling the funding, or as he puts, deferring it for the Finch LRT. I mean, it's just, you've got people in Rexdale and Jane Finch, most of whom work 2 or even 3 part-time jobs. That's the reality of life in those neighborhoods. If you want to feed your family, you work 2 or 3 part-time jobs, and they take buses to all their jobs. And people literally, and I've gone on the buses with people, so I know this to be a fact, people literally spend 3 or 4 hours a day on a bus. And he picked those people to take away. The rapid transit would have dramatically improved their lives. For example, gained people enough time in the day, because it's the waiting between the buses when you're transferring things, right? If you have rapid transit, you don't have the waiting because it comes on time. Literally changed people's lives enough so that they would have been able, for example, to either be home sooner or to go take some courses like my mom did. You know, she got her degree at the age of 56 because her union had negotiated an agreement that if you got a degree, you got paid more. So she went and got a degree at the age of 56. And there's people all over the city who would like that kind of opportunity and literally can't get it because they're sitting on a bus. So I thought that was reprehensible. If there's any way I could possibly have done something that would have prevented that, I would have done it. And the other thing is, and this is again a provincial thing, I feel very strongly that in a municipal election, landed immigrants should have the vote. Because all of the things that municipal government is about are, so it's shared by some. Maybe I should have sort of thrust that out more loudly and it would have been received more applause. But the things that the city government does affect people in their everyday lives, and if you've made a permanent commitment to this city, you should have the chance to vote on them. And I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of neighborhoods that don't have investments have a lot of newcomers, because they don't have the political power. Right? Now suppose, you know, if you know Jane Finch and Rexdale like I do, which is really well, there are a lot of newcomers there who don't vote. Now could it be that's why the province chose that line to defer the funding for 5 years, which, you know, probably will never come, and not the one that goes through Leaside?
I'll let the audience fill in the blanks on that one.
I was asking a question of you.
Well, naturally, that's why we have a subway going to York University right now. You know, these things, transit planning in Toronto has been really political for a long time, and I guess it remains so.
Well, we tried to overcome that. I committed in the election to bringing forth, in the 2006 election, bringing forth a plan based on light rail. And I promoted light rail for several reasons. First of all, in the inner suburbs in Toronto, there simply aren't the densities to properly run subways. It's just not possible. It doesn't make any sense. You need very dense places where people go back and forth, not sort of one-way suburban trips where you're commuting. You need very, very dense communities, and there aren't the densities. Secondly, I knew, because I had been a TTC commissioner for a number of years, that it was the TTC's preferred option. I also knew that you could build an entire network of rapid transit around Toronto for about the same price as a few kilometers of subway. That's the reality if you build a light rail in its own right-of-way. And in most of the suburban areas, the road allowance is wide enough. You're not taking away any lanes of traffic at all. You widen the road slightly, put it down the middle, you got the same lanes of traffic, so it's not even, or shouldn't be, controversial. It should just go ahead. And the support we've had in the suburban areas on Finch and Shepherd actually has been quite dramatic and terrific. So what we promised was a plan. And we actually made a plan that was based on our official plan, which directs the growth in the city away from neighborhoods, so we preserve our stable residential neighborhoods, and puts them onto main streets where there can be transit. And this was not a political lines on a map. It was based on the best analysis by the TTC of ridership patterns and historical ridership and potential ridership based on the official plan. And there's a whole network. And that's the importance of Transit City. It's a network, east, west, and north-south. It was the first time, probably in 30 years, that there'd been a real plan in Toronto for transit, for the advancement of rapid transit. Committed to do that in 2006. Adam Giambrone led the plan. It was ready by the spring of 2007. The Premier announced the funding for it on June 15th, 2007. And I get to tell one of my favorite stories here, because I don't see too many people going, oh gosh, I've heard him say this before. June 15th happens to be my wedding anniversary. So Jill and I traditionally take the day off, and it's the one day a year we actually see each other, which when you're married you like to do occasionally. And so we always do have dinner or go to a play. We often go to Stratford and see a play. This year, that particular year, June 15th, 2007, and be mindful here that 2006 was the election, so I wasn't home for the entire year. I had to phone Jill and say, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you to spend our wedding anniversary in a bus garage in Mississauga. Now, I advise people not to have that conversation with your spouse, but it does make me remember the Premier's commitment very clearly.
Well, that's the problem with this whole campaign. The fate of Transit City sums it up well, because it's up in the air. Nobody's endorsing it, really, except for, again, one candidate who's not going to win.
Well, it's one candidate that might win. If you'd been having this conversation with David Bronkania in Calgary 10 days ago, you would have said the same things. And now, I don't know, I don't think he endorsed a candidate, but the man who won was actually in third. That's the truth. And as they say, you can look it up. Secondly, interestingly, the province has now become the biggest advocate. And I think they've realized that they made a big mistake. And I think what they're going to do is in next year's budget, they're going to put the money back in the Finch LRT, and they're going to get it going because those are ridings that they need to hold and because it's the right thing to do. And that we're going to see it go. We've bought the tunnel boring machines for Eglinton. It's going ahead. Shepherd's underway. Finch was supposed to be the third line. Then they'll have to figure out the Scarborough RT because it'll fall over and fall apart if they don't do it. And even a provincial government with funding challenges will recognize that when part of your transit system falls over and falls apart, you'll have to rebuild it as well. So I actually think, John, it's far enough along that it's going to happen regardless of who wins.
Okay. Now, I should leave some time for other people to ask questions. I have a few up here, and I probably can gather some more. But before I do, the obvious thing I want to ask you, and everyone wants to know, is what's next? Have you given it any more thought? Have you fielded offers?
I'm interested in jobs from an environmental perspective. And I've had the privilege of leading an organization called the C40, which is 40 leading cities of the world: Sao Paulo, Johannesburg, Addis Ababa, Jakarta, New York, London. Mayor Bloomberg from New York City is going to be the next chair. And it's given me an insight that in cities in the world, they're creating modern jobs, the next generation of jobs, through the right kind of sustainable policies. So that's what I'm going to work on. I'm going to be about sustainable urban economies. And I'd like to be able to do that in a way that I work with the private sector, because I think there's lots of companies that are contributing very well to future jobs through the right kind of environmental technology. And I'd also like to have a role in a nonprofit organization. But past that, I haven't quite sorted out what that means or how I actually get paid to do that. And that is one of my criteria.
So you envision yourself as a consultant then, a freelance consultant?
No.
So you've got a job lined up?
No.
You're going to make one up?
Yes.
Okay.